Good morning. So, I heard about this this pipeline thing. This technical difficulties, and I'm sorry, brought down by hackers. Elite hackers attacked, damaging the nation's critical infrastructure. And I was like, hackers attacked a pipeline. I'm like, okay. I guess that kind of makes sense. There's a bit of, there's a lot of corporate and a bit of state-sponsored stuff going on. Technological attacks. Like, that kind of makes sense. And then I found out that it was ransomware, and I was like, oh, well, that definitely makes sense. Because because why wouldn't you have critical infrastructure attached to running on a Windows system? This kind of reminded me of the whole the what perfects an OS video. I talked about this before. You don't need, the operating system is the vehicle by which you install the thing that you want the computer to do in these industrial applications. You've got you have a device in this, probably in this case, a series of pumps and valves and sensors and things that decide what the levels are supposed to be and monitor them and decide if you're going to bleed off pressure or increase pressure or stop one pump or redirect the output of a pump or something, and probably have all that stuff networked so that it goes up the goes across the network to the other central station or whatever, so it's able to report faults or pressure spikes, that kind of stuff. It's pretty basic stuff. You basically need to be able to talk to some hardware, so really just reading some GPIO, possibly with some of this older stuff off some kind of like serial interface or something. So there's just like a serial port plugged into a computer, and then the computer has a pump management software that it runs, and it knows how to talk to that serial device. And it issues commands and gets output and takes that output and forwards it along the network to wherever. So you've got TCP/IP, you've got some I/O. You've probably got a display of some kind that says, hey, if there's an operator right there, someone has to be able to look at it, or might be able to look at it, and maybe a console to issue commands, manual commands. Someone says, hey, I know it doesn't look like it, but you need to shut off this pump. Okay, click, 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 shut off the pump. And that's all it needs. And if you have some level of standardization of software for that pump interface, which is possible you don't, but if you have some level of standardization, isn't it significantly, like, how much would it cost truly to have like a custom operating system built? Like, you say, hey, I need someone to develop an operating system. All I need is TCP/IP. It needs to run on the x86 architecture, low resolution. It does not need internet access. It doesn't even need DNS. It doesn't need name resolution. We just need some IP addresses to be able to fire off some packets of data to, and then connect that to an application. The OS basically becomes that application. It needs to be able to talk to whatever that computer is. So now you have something that's extremely specialized, extremely standardized. It's something that is, I don't want to say security through obscurity, but I mean, in this case, sure, why not? Like, if you're being targeted by hackers, state-sponsored hackers, and like this is critical U.S. infrastructure, which, by the way, I need to come back to. That's an interesting point in itself. Like, if you're being targeted, which is entirely possible, being on a Windows box is not an improvement of the situation. I can almost guarantee you that these were not running the latest version of Windows 10, okay? The other thing is, being at all connected to the internet is also not a positive thing. certainly things can propagate across the network, but having access to like Windows sharing services, or port 34 or 32 or 38 or something like that, I forget what it is, but it's like the Windows sharing system. It's the Windows trusted network. If you're on a Windows box and you're on a local network, hey presto, you're basically trusted. What's going on? That was kind of weird. Oh, geese. There were geese crossing. Oh, look, they're so cute and fuzzy before they grow up and become mean and evil. Right, so that's not an improvement of things to just be on a Windows system. And like, as far as the networking goes, there's nothing that should be like, you've mitigated like 99% of the attacks, especially to lose it to ransomware. Like, that's unreal. Because ransomware is it's a shotgun approach. You know, it's just bouncing around, trying to get everywhere it can, and wherever it gets a foothold in, it spreads itself out. But something like that, you have to assume that, you know, someone was messing around on a computer and gave access to an internal network, and then internally they were able to get access to these pump machines. And if you've got, you know, got an old Windows box, it's basically it's open season. Like, it's gone. So having that custom OS, that all it does is, also if you have that custom OS, no one's going to be there's no bored technicians farting around on you know, sports betting websites and just browsing around 4chan or something during the middle of the night. Although I guess people probably do that on their phones at this point, so that's okay. It just shrinks the amount of attack vectors so much that it's worth it. And you know, it's not like these oil companies have money to burn, right? I mean, the idea of having that custom OS, that all, you know, very purpose, and this is just this could be any other thing, because it's just a purpose-built operating system. All it is meant to do is one task, and it does it perfectly. And that's it. That's all you need. You know, if you wanted to go even further, you could cut out all the networking and make that machine and basically an offline pump operator, and that's it. And then make communication through like some serial port or something like that, so that it's not even on a network. It doesn't even have an IP address. Like, that kind of stuff is not very difficult to accomplish. And then it can forward out of a serial port or out of a COM port to another box, you know, Raspberry Pi or something, that all it's doing is taking serial output and then sending it to the network. Then even if the Raspberry Pi is compromised, like, even being on Linux would have been a dramatic improvement. Like, the ransomware is like, that's a shotgun approach. You're shooting fish in a barrel with a shotgun. It's like, if you get some, that's great, and then I guess they're in a barrel because it's Windows and it's the most popular operating system. But like, if you're not in that barrel, you're probably not going to get shot. If you're not running a Windows box, then you're not going to fall to the myriad Windows worms and ransomware and viruses and all kinds of stuff like that. Also, as an aside, the ransomware in particular, you can call the Secret Service about that. Like, they have a kind of a QRF to respond to that kind of thing, because a lot of it is considered, I think it's considered to be state sponsored, I think, but the Secret Service has always had interest in the technological side of all this stuff, which I don't quite understand, but whatever. As far as I know, they do good work. So, what else? Oh, right. So this is, you know, critical national infrastructure, right? So, so if the infrastructure is critical and national, shouldn't there be some level of standards to it? And this is where you get into the United States thing, where it's like, We are the United States. You are free to pursue your corporate interests. You know, the purpose of a corporation is to pursue high profits, followed thereafter by mitigating risk. And then shortly after that, you know, like doing good, I guess. Maintaining the company. Especially with nowadays with the whole instant economy and instant stock trading and all that stuff. It's like, well, what about Q4? Like, who cares about Q4? We're worried about Q1 right now. We gotta force this up and, you know, get this as high as we possibly can in order to maintain through Q1 and Q2 so we can make it to Q4. It's just, I don't know. The short-sightedness instills instability. It promotes instability. Because it's just short-sighted. It's short-sighted. It's the plan is not long-term. Now, what is particularly interesting is Unicomp is a keyboard manufacturer, and there are, well, in any military application even, or any government application, if you have a bug on your windshield that you kill, if you have a product that this high availability, high reliability corporation or you know, the military or anything like that, even large companies have these requirements. If they're going to need your product and they rely on your product, then they say, okay, if you get our business, then you need to prove to us that you do things in order to mitigate your risk. Like, you need to actively pursue, you need to actively think about this stuff and show us the process that you do to ensure your quality and to ensure that from week to week and month to month and year to year, you're not at risk of vanishing off the face of the earth just because you're so short-sighted. And that is, as much as I don't like it, the purpose of some of those, like ISO 9000 standard, 9001 standards, they are there in place to have a third-party auditor to be able to come in and say, hey, are you doing this? Are you thinking about this? You know, do you have plans for this possibility, this or even eventuality? Like, this is a thing that might happen. Are you prepared for it? And just to kind of get the ball rolling where you're thinking about it. If the business obviously gets big enough, then it's like, it's easy enough to hand wave that stuff away, or to assign someone to generate paperwork and then hand in paperwork and say, oh, look, we did our due diligence, without actually giving it a second, you know, a true, it's like fake answers to a test, kind of. It's like you writing about things that you didn't really do, but you write about them convincingly enough. Like, if you're a big enough corporation, you can do that kind of thing. But if you have a high availability, high reliability product and people want that, and a corporation that needs that high reliability needs your product, they need to know that you are not going to disappear. They need to know that you are not going to crash because some weird thing happened and then the whole production line crashed, and, you know, someone gets hit by a bus and then they don't have, someone wins the lottery and no longer wants to work, and that was your linchpin person for the entire corporation. Like, these are all things that are considered. And at any point, your customer may audit you and say, hey, are you running strong? Like, are you good over there? Like, what is the health of your business? What are the risks that your business has? And how capable are you of continuing to provide this product for our corporation? I assume that exists for the gas companies, the oil companies. I assume this exists. Like, internally, there's probably like risk mitigation things, but at a high enough level, you just become that Chicken Little who's in there like, guys, we're running Windows XP on national infrastructure, like things that are critical to the country's operation. It's like having a, you know, just-in-time trucking system. Well, the government doesn't own the just-in-time trucking system that delivers groceries to all of these grocery stores, because they're individual corporations. They manage their own risk however they want to. But there's no standards. So if one of those things crashes, then it's like, oh, well, you know, the corporation should have been pursuing security. The corporation should have been mitigating its risk. And that's just not, that's not always the focus. And when it's not the focus, you put yourself in these situations where this is not a nationalization argument, okay? You put yourself in these situations where it's like, hey, so, especially food supply. Food supply runs like this. Like food supply, groceries are run on a just-in-time inventory. So they receive product. It's basically like right on the edge of running out of food all the time, always. And probably about the same for gasoline deliveries. Like there's no storage facilities where if there was a disruption, that there would be reserves that you could pull upon. Further, if you are a corporation, then having reserves that you can pull upon in case of emergency, that kind of thing, that is actually actively unprofitable. That is a resource that you are holding on to. That is liquid capital, gasoline. that is illiquid capital in the form of gasoline that is tied up in a big reservoir that you're just keeping just in case. Further, if you keep that just in case and there's gasoline disruptions, and then your corporation, who had the foresight to plan ahead and has all these things set aside, says, haha, no one else has gas, but we have gas. We planned ahead. Now we will reap the benefits. And if you charge anything extra, it's gouging. It's price gouging. So you're not allowed to do that either. Like, everything is... This is like peak capitalism, where we're running in the red line of running all these corporations, including like critical national infrastructure, things that the country needs to survive so that people don't starve to death. And like we're running it in the red line. It's like just barely like there's no control. And then any blips or disruptions where things go whoops, unexpected things, and things seem to break down. So I absolutely believe that this critical, if you're going to complain that they need to prepare for, they need to plan ahead in order to mitigate the risk because they operate critical national infrastructure, then you need to be prepared to, like, then you need to be prepared to ask why they're not nationalized, why there's not more, I'm going to say it, is more government control over it. Like, the whole thing with, like, the United States runs on trucking. A trucker strike would be devastating to almost the entire country. America runs on truckers. And if there was, for whatever reason, a disruption in the ability of trucks to deliver things across the United States, it would be extremely, extremely bad. It's like an existential threat to the country. And we can't sit back and pretend that, well, we can just let that be because they're a corporation and they'll have to figure it out if they want to stay profitable. Like, yeah, maybe. Like if this is a generational thing. These people are operating this, like I said, they're running that business in the red line. They're trying to get maximum profit, minimum investment, in order to satisfy the shareholders to make it to Q2 with no thought of even next year. Like, it doesn't work. It can't work. I don't know what the solution is, but it sure isn't what we got.